and IS research, and the question was, is there something like that what IS research can help in the area of metals and minerals? And to start with this area, let's have two definitions: what a mineral is and what a metal is. Basically, everybody has an understanding. Minerals are as it is described here, chemical compounds, crystalline, and that have been created through geological processes. Metals are refined minerals, usually with electrical and thermal conductivity. So there's several physical attributes, and during the last not more than 10 to 15 years, a lot more of metals of the periodical systems are being used in technology. So, for example, 15-20 years ago, technology didn't require much more than the standard materials. But today, like in the display in an iPad or in every battery, there are several special metals that have very special attributes that require those metals to be used. And so the material scientists in Oxford, they are researching how those metals can be exchanged by other metals or by other materials, by carbon materials, for example. So we are doing a little, the economics around it and the IS component around it. So very important about this topic is you see here a car and condensators. So the whole world talks about the change in energy policy. Like in Germany, it's very important at the moment, obviously, as Germany quits nuclear power, and this requires a lot of wind and solar power being built up. And everybody talks about electric mobility, but what most people don't know is that especially those technologies require a lot of those special materials. So solar power requires in every solar module there is like at least 3 or 4 of different metals that are very rare on the Earth. Neodymium, an average windmill requires 500 kilos of neodymium, which is a rare metal because it's a magnetic metal. It's a very strong magnet, and you require it to generate the electricity. So those materials are very essential for an energy change to happen, because if we don't have those materials, we will never be able to build, for example, electric vehicles in a sufficient number, or otherwise, if electric vehicles are too expensive because we are not able to handle these materials in a sensible way, then people will stick on oil even longer. So, on the other hand, those metals and minerals, there should be some dots here. Such metals and minerals are obviously have a lot of attributes that don't make it compatible with the focus, or that it needs something else than energy informatics as was designed. So we were thinking about what we can do about that. And said, okay, we will define metals and minerals informatics. It's a kind of similar definition compared to Rick Watson's, as the analysis, redesign, and implementation of sustainable business practices and processes associated with metals and minerals. with the support of information systems. So, and the objective of my talk today is, on the one hand, to establish this subfield like metals and minerals informatics as a new subfield of Green IS. In the virtual workshop we were discussing that there could even be more subfields. I could, for example, think about agricultural informatics or something like that. It's definitely an important topic as well, and there's a lot of IS support that could be done there. And we built a conceptual framework capturing the flow economy, and this is just supposed to give an overview on the topic to derive future research questions and topics. So this is the framework. Before I go into more detail here, I will just start explaining this framework in its parts. So on the left and on the right we have mediating forces. This is also a similar approach as Watson's. We have policies and regulations like limits to or bans on mining certain materials, for example. This is mining has a huge ecological impact, in parts huge social impact. For example, if you have a look at the conditions of mining companies in areas of the world where the states are not as do not care about the workers' health. Limits on emissions, environmental hazards. We have an economic perspective. Obviously, Green IS very often has an economic impact as well. So many companies, they just implement Green IS because it's if you use less energy, then it costs less money. So you don't have to be idealistic to do Green IS. And consumers are willing to pay extra for green or for social. So if you can have the label, it's an incentive for companies. And we have corporate and social norms like positive role models, peer pressure, social conscience. You don't want to be in the press as a company that does doubtful things. There's an interesting example regarding this topic. I had this image of the condensators before, and Nokia was in press some, maybe I think eight years ago when there was a civil war in Africa, and the civil war was in parts financed by the export of metals from a mine, and this went into press, and it was said that Nokia, all the cell phone boom of Nokia was basically financing a civil war in Africa. So this was a huge damage to Nokia's reputation in this area. Then on the top and on the bottom of this framework, we have forward and reverse logistics. Forward logistics goes basically from supply to demand, mining, production, assembly, distribution, and purchase. Reverse logistics, if a product is at the end of its usage, then you have used products, you may have used components of products, you may have raw materials, and then the product is disposed. So on the one hand, you have a complex supplier networks that have to be managed in the forward logistics. Then you have usage. In the beginning, everybody's glad about a new product, but after a few years, so maybe in 3 or 4 years, you won't use the iPad anymore, you want the iPad 5. And then there's the question, redo, like refurbish, remanufacture, recycle, or dispose. So the question is, what can be done with the used products? I think there's a huge opportunity in the world if we just don't produce as much waste, because we, if we would think through these steps for each product, and if each product would have a life cycle like that. So what do I mean by that? If you have a product like, for example, an iPad, and at the end of its usage, for Stefan, at least for Stefan, it's at the end of its usage, and he says, I want the iPad 5. So what can he do with his old iPad? The worst thing would be to just dispose it. So probably an iPad is a valuable thing, so you probably will try to sell it on eBay. He may, for example, donate it to some organization, but there would definitely be the possibility to refurbish and reuse the product. So what could also happen is you use the iPad a lot, and the battery isn't working so well. Just refurbishing it won't do, because after half an hour the power is empty. So the question is, can products be designed in a way that can be effectively remanufactured, that you just put in another battery and then it will do for the next 5 years? And if those possibilities won't work, then the question is the recycling. Is it possible to get the material out? So this is, besides disposal, this is the least attractive, because recycling electronic waste is not an easy task. It's never possible to get all the material out. But yeah, basically these should be the steps in a circular flow economy that would be implemented should be implemented for every product. So coming back to the framework, we have forward logistics, we have reverse logistics, we have the policies and regulations on both sides, and basically we're going from mining, production, assembly, distribution, purchase, usage, end of usage, and then we have the used product, and we should ask the question, is it possible to refurbish and reuse and to redistribute it? Then we have, if it's not possible, then we have used components, and the question is it possible to remanufacture, reassembly, distribute it? And if this isn't possible, we have the raw materials, and we should try to recycle the product. Disposal of dispersion. 5 minutes, yeah. Disposal of dispersion. So what do I mean by dispersion? The point is that, so for example, neodymium, I said before, which is built into the windmills. So you have half a ton of neodymium there. It's easy to recycle that. So if you want to renew a windmill, if you want to build up, you just take the old one down, and then you melt the neodymium and you can build new windmills out of it. If you think about a display like this, and the materials that are in a display like this, for example, indium, it's a very thin. So there's very little indium in a display like this, and the problem is that it's very difficult to recover this very little indium from a display. If you do not recover it, and if it gets dispersed, if it just goes out into the nature, then you will never recover it, because you cannot start to collect single molecules of certain materials. It's impossible. You don't have an ore or something like that you can mine again, so it's basically lost for humankind. Will never recover it on Earth. So this means that so many people think that material is something that you can always recover. No, it's basically if you disperse it, it gets lost. And this is an issue for some material. For example, think of all the lead that has been dispersed very finely during the time when people used leaded fuel. So we will never be able to recover this lead. So now the question is, what can IS do about this circular flow economy? And We have the following situation. We have already said that. We have increasing population, increasing demand, emissions and waste, limited availability of resources, supply risk, lack of transparency. We have certain challenges. We have challenges like we have lack of social and environmental information. It is usually qualitative, so you cannot say, okay, we have quantitative data on or in sufficient ways we have qualitative data on which resources are where at the moment. It is distributed along complex supply networks. Nobody knows what the supplier is actually putting into his product. You just buy a condensate and you don't care which material is in there. We have a question on data management, a lot of questions on data management, on information, on tracking of products, components and materials. Like remanufacturing only works if you know what components are in this product. And you also have to know this if you want to calculate fair value for a product. If you want to, for example, if a producer wants to buy back the used products from remanufacture them, you have to calculate a fair value. And in our opinion, IS can contribute a lot of artifacts, like methods, tools, techniques for sustainable decision making in this area, like for integrated information exchange in this supply network and in this circular flow economy. We can use network analysis to analyze supply networks, for example. There's a lot of topics like information as a service, big data, ontologies that can be used to combine all the different sources of information in this area. And criticality indices, it's a topic on how easily accessible or which are really critical for the economy. So our idea was to establish, and this is a very visionary idea. Okay. So our idea was to establish this area, metals and minerals informatics, that builds a network through all the participating companies here, and then that could help to enable to have better management, basically, of those materials. So, and nearly just in time. Thank you very much for your attention, and open for questions.